Hello and welcome to Lesson 11 on Higher Computing Science, Database Design and Development. In the previous video, I showed you that the SQA have given examples of how to create a query and use the result of that query in another query. It's not normal to do this in most database systems, so what you would normally do is use what's called a subclause. But the SQA states that using a subclause is beyond the scope of Higher and will not be assessed. But it does come up in exams and it does come up in courseworks. Look at this. Perfect Eyes wants to know which customers have more than average loyalty points. So they write a query to find the average loyalty points. And then you're asked, use the query from part 1, saved as AVG points query, and use the result of this to find who's got more than the average number of points. So since it comes up, let's learn how to do it. The last video you learned how to do it using subqueries, right? This is my preferred method. But if you're using Microsoft Access, it's also possible to do it in another way. Let's say we want to find the name of the oldest dog. Well, first we need to find the age of the oldest dog. So we create a query in SQL view that selects the max age from dog. When we run it, we see that 18 is the highest age of a dog in our database. It's probably best to use an alias here because EXPR1000 doesn't make much sense. And we'll call it oldest age, something like that. This might ring a bell actually because we did this previously. Oldest dog age finds the max age as oldest age from the dog table. So let's use this query. In order to use the result of this query in another one, we need to create the query. And we're going to show the dog name. And we're going to select that from the dog table, but also the query that we created and saved. So this is called 5 oldest dog age. But in SQL, you cannot have spaces. Well, you can, but in order to include the spaces, you need to use square brackets. I mentioned this in a previous video. And then we type the full name of the query. So it's 5 oldest dog age. So we're getting the dog name and we're using these two tables because you can treat a query just like a table. But we only want to see the name of the dog where the age of the dog is equal to the oldest age of a dog. And we get that from this previous query where we saved the age of the oldest dog as oldest age. So we can use that alias here. Let's run it. There we go, Biscuit, the old lady. So we're getting the dog name from the dog table, but we're also using this query, which finds the oldest dog's age, and making sure that we only show the dog name where their age is equal to that oldest age. Personally, I'm not a fan of this technique. I do prefer using a subquery like this, a subclause. But as I mentioned, the SQA do ask exam questions like this where you save a query and you have to use the result of that query in another one. So let's do the next one. Show the name and phone number of the owner of the youngest dogs. So first we need a query in SQL view to find the youngest dogs. So that's min age. Let's give it an alias, young age, from the dog table. Let's just double check. So 1 is the youngest age. And we need to save this query. Let's call it youngest dog. I'll click OK. I'm not including spaces this time. Then we create the main query, which will refer to that other query. And we want to show the forename, surname, and phone number from the owner table, where the dog's age, so we will also need the dog table, where the age is equal to the result of that query that I just created, youngest dog. So we also need to include youngest dog, and we say where the age is equal to the result of this query. We used an alias called young underscore age. So that's what we use here, young underscore age. Because we've used more than one table, we need to join those tables. You don't need to join queries to tables. This one's a query. But you do need to join the table. So owner ID equals dog.owner ID. Let's run it. And we'll get the same results as before in the previous video, 38. But again, some of these owners appear multiple times. We've got Miriam and Miriam. So we can still group by, the forename, surname, and phone number. So now we should only see 36. Yeah, those duplicates have been removed. And finally, the names of all dogs that have been on a walk that happened later than the average walk time. First, we need to find the average walk time. We create a query, SQL view, we're going to select AVG walk time from the walk table. We need to give this an alias though, as average time. That'll do. We need to save this. And it's advisable to save the query using a different name than the alias of the result of the query. It's tempting to call it average time, but your other query that refers to it might get confused as to whether you're referring to the query or the field within the query, if that makes sense. Let's just call this AVG walk time. That'll do. Now we need to create the query that finds the dogs who have been on those walks. So we've shown the dog name. It comes from the dog table, but we also need the walk to get the time that the dog was on the walk, but we also need the query. The query is AVG underscore walk underscore time. And we want to find the dogs where the time that they went for a walk, so that's walk time, is later than average time. Average time is what we called it here, average time, in the subquery. Because we've also used two tables, we need to join these, and this should work. And it does, but again, we find 5,000, almost 5,400 when we've only got around 500 dogs. So there's a lot of repetition in here, obviously. So we can group by the dog name, so we only see each dog name one time. There we go, 292, same as in the previous video. So there you have it, using the result of a query in another query. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next one.